This video focuses on what civil rights are. So, civil rights are a little bit different than what we've already talked about in civil liberties. Civil liberties are meant to be protections against the government, and civil rights are sort of like measures provided by the government. And really, the important thing being to promote equality amongst all of its citizens. Now, if you think of images that kind of go along with this type of thinking, you think about like Dr. Martin Luther King, who was prominent during the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s and fought for equality and treatment towards African Americans. The women's rights movement that has spanned a large portion of American history is also an example of a civil rights movement. Modern times, the movement to provide equal treatment for members of the LGBTQ community. Again, all of these are examples of sort of like groups that are fighting for equality in terms of like the way they're treated. And these are examples of civil rights. And when we often talk about civil rights, we look at terms like discrimination, right? Discrimination being when people are treated differently in some capacity, whether it's by the government itself, by an employer, by a business. They're treated unfairly based on factors that are often beyond their control, like their race, their gender, their age, their physical ability or disability, their religion. Any type of mistreatment based on these factors would be discrimination. And then obviously when we talk about especially racial discrimination, one of the things that was prevalent in American history was the idea of like segregation, which is something also that the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s sought to dismantle elements of this that remained in American society. And obviously segregation, which you're familiar with already, most likely from your study of American history, is the idea of like separating people according to characteristics. In the case of American history, largely racial characteristics. So again, civil rights are any kind of protections that the government would extend, really with the purpose of promoting equality amongst its citizens.